His name was Larry Lucchino. He was Princeton educated, went to Yale, got involved from being a lawyer in sports, and the rest is history. And the history of accomplishment with Larry Lucchino is superb. I tried to think of a word when I was writing this long one man's opinion column that's on my website. I urge you to read it because he had a big impact here, had a lot of impact other places. And the word was visionary. He was wired differently. He built stadiums, he built teams, and he built front offices. I first met him when he came to San Diego to be the president of the Padres after he had accomplished a lot in Baltimore. And we just sat one day in his office and just talked about how he got to where he was and what his philosophies were. And he told me a story of growing up in Pittsburgh. He was an old Pirates fan way back in the day, John, at old Forbes Field. And he said he fell in love with baseball and he fell in love with old stadiums, red bricks, green grass, blue skies. Awesome. And that was his phrase. And he wanted to have any stadium that he was involved in, and this is why he got involved in developing the concepts of new stadium, to have that red bricks, green grass, and blue skies. He consulted PNC Park, Pittsburgh, home of the Pirates. If you find a picture, just Google PNC Park, you'll find a picture of home plate looking to the outfield and the whole skyline of the city of Pittsburgh and all the bridges who are painted yellow. Mm-hmm. It's as beautiful a skyline as you'd ever want to see. That's because of him. He gave them ideas at PNC Park. This is what I think should be. This is after they left Three River Stadium. And of course, prior to that, the old ancient Forbes Field. Then he went to Baltimore and he became the president. And then he just devised the idea. We're leaving old Memorial Stadium that had been there since 1954 when the Orioles first moved there, when they were the St. Louis Browns. We're going to build this new thing, and they built it in the railroad yards. And he devised the exact same thing, skyline and a cornerstone. The Baltimore and Ohio Railroad Facility factories were right there. He left the B&O building there. That's the big brick thing that's in right field at Camden Yards. He built that. And that became the most beautiful ballpark in America. Then he came here, San Diego, and he, on his will, with John Moore's money and Lucchino's smarts, came up with the concept, Petco Park, downtown, renovate the gas lamp quarter. And what did he do? Old Western Metals building, empty and vacant, left field. That would be a cornerstone of what we're going to do at Petco Park. Aside from being a really good baseball man, he was a fan-friendly guy. He knew history, and he knew the place of baseball with families, fathers, sons. Nice. The guy was wired really differently. As an executive, I want you to be my general manager. Who? Kevin Towers. Mm-hmm. I want you to be my general manager in Boston. Who? Theo Epstein. End result, Padres go to 2 World Series in the Kevin Towers era. Theo Epstein, they ended the curse of the Bambino. They won 3 rings in Boston. And you know what he accomplished here in town? He used Moore's money and Lucchino's brilliance. They bought up all the properties that were vacant warehouses in the East Village, which was a dump. You know, Gaslamp was not Gaslamp then. They bought up at very cheap prices all these empty warehouses, and their vision, we're going to build 5 hotels. And that will help us finance what we're going to do. And those 5 hotels are going to be a trigger of the East Village. And then suddenly condominiums went up and office buildings went up. Yes. And the skyline drastically changed just because of what he did. And then he convinced, through an awful lot of political red tape and barbed wire, he convinced the city and the taxpayers to help him develop the gas lamp quarter. He was at war with the politicians and the people that were against growth for 7 years. A lot of people failed to remember this or never heard of this. There were 23 lawsuits filed to try to block Petco Park. Mm-hmm. And of course, in that era, we had such competency and leadership in the mayor's office. Yeah. We had drunks and gamblers and sexual perverts who were acting as our mayors. He fought through all that crap. They won all 23 lawsuits filed by the citizens trying to block anything. Mm-hmm. Hell, let's just keep the empty warehouses rusting and rotting in the East Village. Who wants a baseball stadium downtown? Finally, he and Moores got lined up with lawyers and they went to court and they got a resolution that if John Riley, if you're an obstinate and you're going to stop my efforts with another lawsuit, if you lose that lawsuit, John, you're going to pay damages and you're going to pay all my legal fees. The minute they got that approved, all the litigation stopped. And all the people who prevented or tried to roadblock Petco Park disappeared. He met every doggone challenge there was, and he got it accomplished. He also met with the Chargers. A lot of people don't know this. At the old Jack Murphy Stadium site, which became Qualcomm Stadium, on one side of the stadium were the Chargers football offices. Other side, the Padres business offices. He had a meeting with Alex Spanos in Spanos' Chargers office. This had to go back to the mid-1990s. He said, we are going to go downtown and we're going to build a state-of-the-art stadium. Do you want to come with us and be part of it? And we could co-finance it and we'll work together to get the city to approve it and taxpayer money, etc. Alex Spanos stared him down. Alex sitting in his chair. No, I have no interest in working with you. We have our own plans for a stadium. We're the San Diego Chargers. In essence, I was told from somebody who was there, he threw Lucchino out of the office.
Unbelievable.
So at the end of the day, Lucchino went down the elevator, walked out of that stadium, got in his car, went to meet with John Moores, and they went downtown and look at what they accomplished. And Spanos could do it on his own, sat there in that decaying cement structure, continued to walk around with their hands out, build me a stadium, John Riley, pay me, and let me have the operation of the stadium and keep all the profit. It never worked. At the end of the day, we got Petco Park, and the Chargers operated in decay, and everything went downhill from that point on. Then they wound up going to L.A., where they're on the periphery of sports interest, and they don't even have their own stadium. So he did what he set out to do. He ran through every piece of barbed wire there was. He was intense. He was intellectual. He was a fighter. He beat back cancer 3 times before it finally resurfaced and took his life. Time ran out on him. And I thought about this when I was writing my One Man's Opinion column. Time ran out because the last thing he never got to accomplish, and a bunch of baseball people echoed the same thing because I've asked him, should have been baseball commissioner. That's the last thing that would have been in his career. He was so smart as a businessman, so smart about the history of sports, and obviously so smart about what sports needed in terms of venues. Next stop, his widow, Cooperstown, Baseball Hall of Fame.
For sure.
As a contributor.
Yeah.
I just think he's one of the most remarkable people I ever met. He wasn't easy to be around. Sidebar story, Hacksaw on the old Extra 690, we do our talk shows down at the stadium a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So this was towards the end of his era with the Padres, and they had just signed a free agent. And they had just signed Fernando Valenzuela, which to me seemed like a stunt.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the word that I used on the air. I wasn't being critical. Fernando was at the end of the road of an illustrious career, but he had nothing left. And they signed him. And I used the word stunt. It was like at 5:15 at night. At 6, during a break, he came from his offices in the old breaking down stadium, down the elevator, walked through the edge of the parking lot, and said, I wanted to be the first one to tell you, Hacksaw, you're wrong. So I got lectured during a break at 6 p.m. by Larry Lucchino. And we exchanged gunfire on a bunch of different things, and I liked him, and I respected the hell because I knew what he had accomplished. So, like I say, next time we'll talk about Larry Lucchino. I hope it'll be the induction ceremony with his wife making the speech in Cooperstown Hall of Fame.
Unbelievable story, isn't it? I mean, I remember when, the Moores Lucchino group came in and bought the team.
Saved the team from the terrible Tom Werner group.
Yeah. With the Roseanne Barr grabbing her crotch during the national anthem, that Tom Werner group. So what was that, like 94 maybe when they purchased it? And I was like, some guy from Baltimore, and okay, they built a stadium there. Got an East Coast guy in San Diego. I was kind of skeptical. Okay. But wow, the more you learn about him, and the fact that he had huge accomplishments in Baltimore, San Diego, and Boston.
And prior to that, Pittsburgh as a consultant.
That too. I mean, any one of those individual things could potentially be Hall of Fame worthy. And he did all 3.5 or 4 of them. Amazing. Just a few other comments. I wrote down some notes while you were talking about it. Remember Bruce Henderson?
Sure, he was one of the antagonists.
Yeah, he was always trying to sue the Chargers and the city for rebuilding Qualcomm and even the expansion of Qualcomm back in the late 80s, early 90s.
And the ticket guarantee and all that razzmatazz. But he was one of the activists against anything. Hell, I'd rather have those empty warehouses rusting and rotting with the homeless people downtown than a ballpark.
Yeah, there's a lot of people like that are like very anti-progress, anti-growth. He was one of them. The empty warehouse thing is interesting because I remember way before Petco was built. There was just all this kind of industrial buildings that were all falling apart. And one of my buddies started up an internet company, and he was able to lease a portion of the old Carnation Milk building downtown. And that was a dump, but it was perfect for a startup, especially an internet startup. And then he was saying, yeah, we're only going to be here for a few years, and then they're going to blow all this out and build the stadium and all the other surrounding areas. And I went out and looked around. I was like, this is going to be amazing. And it sure has turned out to be that way.
The funny thing, the Padres, after they started to turn the dirt downtown, they had a press conference, and I went down there to cover it because I covered press conferences all the time. And I walked in this lot, and there was a pile of dirt in the middle of this vacant lot with a baseball on it. That was the pitcher's mound. And 90 or 60 feet, 6 inches, there was just a white square slab with strings running at it up the lines. That was home plate. And these would be the first and third base lines going to the outfield. The third base one went to the Western Metals building. And I stood there with Lucchino, and all it was kind of an empty skyline. You could see the Coronado Bridge off in the distance. He said, this will be our ball yard. And I asked him questions about, how did you configure this layout? Did you consider the sun, sunset, winds? He said, we did studies of everything. And he says, when we are done, it won't look like this. Hill of dirt, one baseball on it, a white slab, string. And you stand at home plate right now, see the beauty of everything. You see the skyline, see the hotels, see the condos, see the office buildings. It's phenomenal. The man was a visionary.
He was. I mean, I remember even when I came to, when I was at college in the early 80s, downtown San Diego was just a dump. I mean, it was like, peep show places and trash and homelessness. It was really bad. And they built Horton Plaza and had that shopping mall, which made a big difference. But what Lucchino did was just like 20 times bigger than what Horton Plaza represented. So incredible transformation of our whole downtown, and Lucchino, a huge part of it. The other part I want to comment is, I think, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, is Petco Park the last taxpayer subsidized stadium in California?
Oh, it has to be, because Angel Stadium is historic and falling down. Chavez Ravine has been renovated by rich owners along the way. San Francisco, AT&T Ballpark, now that goes back decades prior to Petco Park. And Oakland Coliseum is Oakland Coliseum.
But then you add in the arenas and the football stadiums. I mean, because, SoFi Field or Stadium, and that was
privately financed by Conkey.
Exactly. So I like that. I like the fact that private interests are going to fund them. But I think the days of taxpayer-funded stadiums, maybe even nationwide, might be behind us.
Well, but sometimes now we're going through processes of, we need to renovate and upgrade, and we'll do it with a sales tax. And that stuff gets voted on in different communities. Sometimes it passes, sometimes it fails, So that's where we are there. Unbelievable storyline. If you've got opinions on Final Four, March Madness, if you've got memories of what that man meant, Larry Lucchino, feel free. I posed a mini poll question on my Twitter account, Hacksaw 1090 today. Which owner made the biggest impact on Padre baseball? Was it Ray Kroc saving the team from going to Washington, D.C.? Was it Larry Lucchino, John Moores, and their vision after they bought the mess from Tom Werner in the terrible 15? Or was it Peter Seidler's attempt to get us into the World Series? And it's interesting. Lucchino is running third in the mini poll. Because the
Really?
emotional vote for Seidler, and everybody remembers that there had not been Ray Kroc out of Chicago, the hamburger magnate, showing up, Padres would have been in Washington, D.C. that season. So it's kind of interesting that not as many people as I would have thought would have enveloped their arms around that man.
Well, Ray Kroc legitimately saved the Padres in San Diego in the 70s. Remember, he got on the PA and was like razzing the players and talking down, apologizing to fans.
It was the first home game they played under Ray Kroc.
Yeah, unbelievable. But Lucchino was so much different, and in my opinion, so much better because of the innovation, the vision, and he built a stadium. The other two didn't. And then the whole reimagination of downtown and the Gaslamp Quarter. That's all, or mostly all, on Lucchino. So in my opinion, he's number one on that poll.
Cooperstown, baby. You're a baseball fan. Join us in Fans Forum. Give us an opinion. One other topic.